Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guests this week are Nancy Kelly and Kenji Yamamoto, who are partners in both filmmaking and in life. Their most recent collaboration was Rebels with a Cause, a documentary about the grassroots movement to preserve American seashores, but just last month, Kino Lorber rolled out a new 4K restoration of their 1991 drama 1,000 Pieces of Gold, starring Rosalind Chow as a young Chinese woman sold into slavery in 1880s America. It's now available on disc and on digital, and you should seek it out. It's kind of a lost classic. Nancy and Kenji picked L'Enfant, Jean-Pierre and Luc Dardenne's 2005 drama starring Jeremie Renier as Bruno, a shiftless young thief in a small Belgian town who's a new father and under a lot of stress, and he makes, well, let's just say, a very bad decision. As acutely observed as their previous films, The Promise, Rosetta, and The Sun, L'Enfant is also the Dardennes' version of a thriller, moving in closer and closer as the consequences of Bruno's decision pile up, and still somehow keeping us on his side when he tries to put things right. It's a nail-biter, and a great one, and I'm really glad we got to talk about it. This is Someone Else's Movie.
It speaks not only to the underclass, but it's moral chaos. Our central character is a petty thief, but there's a part of him that has heart, and that's what makes it interesting. And the fact that he not only works with very young, underage petty thieves in training, it just shows this whole other culture that is unknown to most people. It dares the viewing audience to sympathize with the character. This film really dares you, and it does it very well in so many ways. You find pity in this character. Even though he is despicable in so many ways, there's something that's actually kind of charming. The one thing that is really great is that there's no background that the filmmakers have afforded us about, growing up with a family that's been destroyed or very poor. None of that is filling the screen or your mind or your heart. You're just watching this guy in action, and he is so motivated. You can't help but be compelled to watch it. It's so incredibly truthful to real life, we think.
When did you first encounter it? Did you see it at a festival? Did you catch it theatrically?
We've been Dardenne fans for a while, and what was it?
I don't remember when we first saw it. I mean, we live in the Bay Area, so, it's like, it could have been at a festival, but it could have been at just one of the great independent theaters that are around. So I don't remember. That was made in 2005?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we've also seen it so many times.
Right.
I mean, when we were trying to figure out what we would like to talk to you about, we've been together for 40 years and we love to go to the movies together, and so it was just like, oh, there's this and there's that. But then when Kenji said, oh, something by the Dardennes, it was like, yes, let's do that.
Yes.
So, and then it was hard to decide which of their films we liked the best, but I think this is hands down.
Yes,
the best.
I mean, we were both drawn to Vagabond. That's a stunning film too. The plight of a young woman being so poor, and my gosh, your heart just goes out to her. And an interesting play on time too.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the genius of that film is that we know how it ends, right? We know that nothing she does is going to change the way things work out for her. And so it's just such a great way of instantly becoming sympathetic to this character who, just resists sympathy for the entire film. She just doesn't want it. And so
Right.
it's just this masterstroke on Varda's part of connecting us to her. The Dardennes...
Can I ask you a question about that? Do
sure.
you think that they started out with that intention of that as the beginning, or do you think that they just nobody could sympathize with that character, and that was their way of making that happen?
I wonder. I think Varda has played with time enough and structure in her films that I think it must have been a conscious choice beforehand. Mm-hmm. But if it is an editorial solution, it's brilliant. Like it's a masterstroke either way.
Right. Or maybe they just were struggling with that when they were writing the script. They probably don't struggle the way some people do.
You know, a lot of our enjoyment in watching films is of course the neorealism that De Sica started with Bicycle Thief, and there's always a draw to that in that the naturalism that plays out. Ken Loach does the same thing, and it makes us gravitate to a narrative film that it really speaks of life, untarnished, unpolished. There it is. This is the real situation, and maybe a situation that most viewers don't see. And I feel like my soul gets bared when we witness these films. And Dardenne brothers really sort of in the pinnacle of their career. They really know how to be fascinated by a situation and think of a narrative. I think I read about Lafont, and that they were making a film, and as they were shooting, they witnessed a young woman with a baby carriage, hustling down the street. And that sort of set them off to think of a narrative that would sort of fill her life. And I thought, that is fascinating to me, that sophisticated and very elite men could sort of be in the soul of these underclass people, as it were. And they have a great depth of understanding of the human nature.
Yeah, it's a kindness, right? Like it's a boundless kindness towards their characters that even though they are frequently... And right around the mid-2000s, a lot of their movies revolved around parents and children and people just making the absolute worst decision and then either trying to walk it back or refusing to apologize for it right up until it crashes down around them. And somehow I can rewatch these films as opposed to just sit there and hate what I'm seeing. And I mean, even as far back as Rosetta, they were determined to make you connect to all of these people. Varda's Vagabond is a great example to bring it up in connection because they do have that same continuum of sympathy and feeling for their subjects, for their characters. And I think the fact that they have like Jeremie Renier in L'Enfant and in most of their, like they work with him constantly because they know what he's capable of. And that gives us as fans of their work a false sense of security because, they like him, he'll be fine.
Yeah, right.
And that is not what this movie's about.
Yeah.
It was really brilliant that the characters, Bruno and Sophie, were so joyous together early in the film that they really had love. If that was missing in this film, if that was not captured early on, I would have felt like this would be too dark to watch. And that they really possess a happy life.
They were like children themselves in a way, weren't they? In the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly have no idea what responsibility really is or what...
Well, she did.
Yeah, that's true. She's actually already ahead of him.
Even before they were rolling around in the grass, she went and looked in the back of the convertible, right? She checked to be sure that Jimmy was fine, right? She was... like even from that first moment when you see her climbing the stairs, like the film starts like that. She was, taking care of the baby, holding the baby, not being all cooey and stuff, but that she had a mature attitude towards being a mother.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, in a way, she's also mothering him as well. She's clearly been taking care of him. He goes out and has the illusion that he's the head of the household and is responsible, but he sees everything as an opportunity to be exploited, and so he can never really, you can't be responsible if you're always looking for the next hustle.
Well, he rented out her apartment while she was in the hospital delivering the baby. She
Exactly.
came back and they wouldn't even let her in. She had to practically kick the door down to get her phone charger. I mean,
he was hustling his own mother.
His own, right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And, also inventing Airbnb, but no one gave him any credit for that.
No. Right. Yeah.
And just that little scene with the mother, sort of knowing what kind of character he is, she herself is sort of accepting it as it is. It's like, all right, I'll go in with you on this game, as it were.
Yeah.
And wow, I just felt like she may have had this other occupation as a petty thief herself. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, she rolls with pretty much everything. She seems...
But remember right before she kind of had almost shut the door on him, the mother, and then she opened it again and she said, "What time was he here?"
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you could tell she had been going through in her mind, all right, the police are going to come. They're going to ask me these questions. I mean, she knew that.
She's putting a story in her, yeah.
I mean, we were talking about this morning, that what was so great was that they didn't spend a lot of time on either one of the characters' backstories, really, except that there was that little moment with Bruno's mother where, it was like, oh, his mother's, she's had her experience with the police, too. She's part of this sort of underworld.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it speaks volumes as to who he is and where he comes from and why he is the way he is, maybe. But even if this is just something he's done to wear down everybody else, it's effective, right? It's worked for him to this point because he's never suffered any real consequence because there is this support system that people protect him and make sure he'll be okay until he does something which is unforgivable, except that we still want to forgive him because we kind of like him. He's a terrible person.
That was pretty unforgivable, but the way that did you find yourself liking him when he was putting the baby on the floor and then coming in and finding the money?
Well, maybe not in that moment.
Yeah.
but it's that thing where because I am empathizing, because I'm already sympathetic to him and I want him to get his head straight and do the right thing, and also because it's not my first time seeing this film and I know what's going to happen. I'm not in this squirming, queasy space. I'm just like, oh, come on, you'll figure this out. Come on, do it a little figure it out a little faster.
Yeah,
The clock is ticking.
Right. When we were, last night when we were watching this, rewatching it, that moment when she says to him, "Here, take Jimmy for a walk in the park." It was just like, no. How could you trust him? He's such a jerk.
Yeah.
I love the moment when he's walking with his baby and he stops and you see him thinking, turns the baby carriage around, and it's like every scene he's motivated to do something. It's like, oh, please, don't do this. But he does.
He does. But we never stop seeing him as a human. He's never a monster. He's, was it Noah Hawley? Noah Hawley making Lucy in the Sky said that he wanted to make a movie about the real story, not the tabloid thing about the astronaut who drove across America wearing diapers, because he knew there had to be a person behind that story, that the tabloid version isn't real. And in a way, this is that kind of story as well. This is something that you'll see in a headline, father prosecuted for selling child. And
9-day-old child, I might.
Yeah, and you won't take 2 seconds to think, oh, that's, you'll dismiss it right out of hand. That's a horrible person. He doesn't deserve, throw the book at him. And absolutely, yes. But we understand a little bit. We just get the tiniest sense of how completely... it's still wrong, and I am not justifying it, but, there's no way this guy is ready to be a father. He sees an answer, he sees a solution, and he takes it because he's not thinking responsibly or in any way about how this action will affect anybody.
Well, and everything is something for sale, you know?
Yeah.
The hat, I'll give you X for this camera, but you got to throw in the hat, And and the way that he said twice in the film, well, we'll just make another one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's pure. I mean, he sees their child as merchandise.
Yeah.
And, why wouldn't you just keep making them if you can get away with this?
I know.
It's fun. It's easy.
Right.
Well,
right.
All the labor is on her side. She has to carry it for 9
He
months.
doesn't even have to go to the hospital with her. Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
He's come up with a perfect perpetual motion machine, but Jesus.
Oh. But,
But
to his credit, though, the moment, after she passed out and he carried her to the car, to the hospital, immediately he started trying to get the baby back,
Yeah.
She didn't have to tell him, he came to that on his own. He kind of
Yes.
grew up in that moment.
Yeah. And that's what you root for, right? You root for
Yes.
you root for them to maybe not redeem themselves, but at least just fix this one problem.
Yeah.
I think it is the style of the Dardenne brothers that, in this pinnacle point, he'll add an action right immediately, and so Bruno makes that decision right away. Very much with, his 14-year-old accomplice, his thief in training, who he admires and plays along with and farts with him and so on and so forth, and they're bargaining back and forth and finally having sympathy with him when he gets caught by the police that he went over the edge and he's got to do something. And once again, it's a moment of action, and you're wondering, where is he pushing this motorcycle? Is he going to sell it? What is he going to do? And he ends up at the police station, and that was the first surprise, a big surprise. The first time viewing this film, it's like, oh my God, he has a heart.
Yeah.
But even when he says to the little kid, I forget his name, that
Yes.
14-year-old, he says, I brought the scooter.
Yeah.
The scooter doesn't work because he had to push it all over town, right? He hands him the key like he's just going to jump on it and bring it back to his brother, but it was broken.
Yeah. But
He wasn't done totally with the con. But
yeah, exactly. It's not even a question of having the right intentions. It's not that it's a gesture.
he just can't help it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what makes it believable as a human story rather than a scripted drama, almost. The fact that he doesn't change all the way in a moment. Like Ebenezer Scrooge's conversion is the result of a fantasy. The whole thing of that story. Everybody wants... we see it now with politicians, and we see it with tycoons, for lack of a better word. We keep hoping that they'll have a come to Jesus moment, suddenly realize they've been doing the wrong thing, and either resign or apologize or make good. That never happens. People don't change that radically. And that's why we take comfort in narratives where they do, right? Because it's an escape from reality to see someone turn themselves around 100%. And I think the closest you get is Bill Gates suddenly realizing, oh, you know what? Let's fight malaria, which... good for him. I'm all for it. But he still built Microsoft and did all that other damage.
Still charging too much.
Yes. Well, yeah. Elon Musk isn't going to suddenly realize that flying cars on Mars isn't going to work for everybody, and he'll suddenly turn around and become a socialist. And all we want is incremental change. And the idea that the Dardennes make movies where flawed people stay flawed, but try to be less so, and just become aware of their own flaws and start to work to correct them, that becomes rapturous for us by the end of the film. You walk out on this high of hope because all someone did was try to fix a mistake. And that's enough, right? That's the thing that you hope people that will do. That's the thing you hope the world can learn. And somehow they've turned it into this absolutely thrilling drama where this stranger that I'll never encounter, who doesn't exist, who's a fictional creation, is still just trying to be a better person. And it's inspirational, damn it.
Yes.
So do you think that, when they were... I guess this is a spoiler alert for if there's anyone in the world who hasn't seen this film.
Yes, this 15-year-old movie. I think
that that last scene where that tragic thing where their foreheads are together and they're crying. I mean, did you have hope that they were gonna, like, that Bruno really had seen the light and he was gonna, when he got out, he was gonna lead a different life, be a different person?
I hope so. I mean,
Yeah.
they're done. They don't have a future together, and she'll probably murder him in his sleep if he ever comes back. But I hope so. I hope that, it's one of those moments where you have the potential, and I think I'm buoyed by it because I want to believe he will try to change, or at least just be better. He won't change, I don't think. He'll be shorting people on tips, and he'll be kind of doing petty, stupid stuff. But he might be the interesting character who returns to the kid's life later, having turned himself around, even though the child's mother isn't going to want anything to do with him. There might be hope. I can see that movie. I can see that sequel, because I just automatically drawn towards narratives and I want to keep them going. But I think the point is that if you want him to do that, then that's what happens, right? Like, because the story ends, because we get to continue it in our own minds. I'm trying to remember how they put it. I actually interviewed the Dardennes in Cannes. The one time I went was in 2008, when Lorna's Silence was there.
Oh my.
And it was the only... I did a handful of interviews because I was mostly just seeing everything in competition. And when it was offered to me, it's like, yes, absolutely. Yes, please, let me sit down with these two Belgian masters. And they said something I found really interesting. That our characters don't go to the movies. And because they're busy, I think was the point.
Yeah, they're hustling.
But but it stuck with me because it answers every question. The characters don't know about narratives and predetermined dramatic arcs. They're just flailing on their own. And L'Enfant is a film that only works if it ends where it ends, right? Because if it gives us any further information, it solidifies the stopping point they've chosen. And they did a similar thing with Lorna's Silence, which I think is how we ended up talking about that in the first place, where you just end on this strange note of ambiguity with this young pregnant woman who probably isn't actually pregnant but is convinced that she still is, in a cabin, isolated, alone, facing a completely uncertain future. I think they know that they have to end where they end, because otherwise we will fill in the blanks too concretely.
Right. I mean, it was so tragic, the end of L'Enfant, Just, they both knew that they had ruined their lives.
That, to me, is the ending, is that they came to that realization, that they realize how fucked up their lives are. And everything that led up to it has destroyed their future in every way. And it may not be the most hopeful answer to an ending of a film, but to me it was a completion of his journey in a way, because he came to terms, he really saw who he is.
Yeah. No, I mean, self-knowledge is an epiphany we don't all get, right? I mean, I'd like to think that I know who I am, but...
Right, there's a part of you, Bruno's in there somewhere.
Yeah. What was the Emo Phillips joke? I used to... what was it? I've always thought the human brain is the greatest achievement in evolution, but look what's telling me that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just...
Whose joke is that?
Emo Phillips.
Oh.
Just a genius. But that's what this movie is about too, right? This person has built his life along a specific moral code, which is screw everybody over before they can screw you.
Right.
And he comes up against the limits of it. And the glimmer of understanding that he's damaged himself more than anyone else. I mean, not literally, he sold his child. The child is more damaged than he is. But the idea that this is what you're forced to confront, that this is who he knows who he is, and it's up to him to live with it and be better.
Right.
Yeah, it's absolutely shattering. And the idea that you can come out of it feeling hopeful, or that I insist on feeling hopeful, probably just says more about me than about...
As you were talking, I was thinking, how does somebody get to be Bruno's age, even though he's not old, and not know the difference between right and wrong when it comes to selling a child, right? And not even in the adoption market, where it's like nuns or good-hearted people are between you and the adoptees, It's just like some dirty old building. You put the baby down on your jacket and come back and you find money there.
Oh, yeah. Nothing about that is right.
How does he get to that point? But then, I don't know. It's true. You just can't really hate the guy. And I know their intention is to help make people think, well, I could do something as morally reprehensible as that, given the opportunity, or maybe I actually have, you know, that it's in all of us, you know.
What was so remarkable about that scene where he is selling his child is the labyrinth that he has to walk through. Immediately the viewer is disoriented, as he is too. And it's sort of a thriller in a sense, in that he's in a dangerous place. There could be no money at all. There could be gunfire, who knows what. It's all a matter of trust on word that there would be compensation for this child that he gives up in this building, and the only way that they communicate is by phone, a little message. And it was quite a scene. In a sense, he had to be in doubt that this may not happen. And and even when he went back to get his baby, that was also in doubt. It's like, how remarkable for him as a character to turn around and bring back the child of his girlfriend, really. And giving up his phone too. That his only mode of communication.
That's true.
That's how he makes his deals. That's his only tool. You know, it had all these sort of amazing sort of thriller elements in the filmmaking that I thought, wow, you had me at the edge of my seat. Yeah, that's what makes him sort of sympathetic in so many ways, is that I'm sort of like with him and hoping.
He also they didn't use the kind of thriller stylistic things.
True.
You know, like they said your heart was in your throat, but it was still sort of handheld camera following the guy down the hallway, you know, that kind of stuff. And it was interesting how they could scare you so much.
By the way, the handheld technique is a superb method of making their narratives. The Dardenne brothers have been very consistent about doing that, and you just feel like you're in life. Such as the last scene, there's no over-the-shoulder shot of Bruno and then cut to his girlfriend. It's like, here's this side shot of both of them, and you're just stuck with them, and you're just watching them break down. And wow, it's breathtaking to see that. It's daring too. It's like, there's not going to be a cutaway, but they didn't care.
We were talking about this morning, that you in trying to decide how to shoot that. I mean, profiles are typically, you don't think you're going to get as much of the emotion, but you did. I mean, really profoundly, you know. Oh, that was such an unforgettable scene.
I think it's the confidence too, to know that they can just hold that shot by that point, because if they don't have us by then, they'll never get the audience on board.
Yeah.
But they've chosen a very specific gray palette. You know, like, it looks bleary and grimy and real. Yeah. But and somehow it's never monotonous. There's a banality there that is absolutely intentional, right? Their lack of effect is itself a style. But when you want to turn it into a thriller, when you want to actually inject elements of genre that we respond to as an audience, because we understand how stories work, and we know that, you know, someone goes into a dark alley, that's a bad thing. Maybe they use it metaphorically, maybe it's a moral decision that's being made, but it's still the staging, the lack of, you know, the whole movie is handheld, so we're already in a state of casual tension, constant tension. If you in those 5 minutes when it turns into a thriller, and there are two separate sections, but in those sections where the film does turn into a proper, you know, thriller, we're already there. We're already on edge. We're already agitated, but it's an emotional agitation rather than the momentum of the narrative. We're worried. We're not scared. It's a completely different experience, and it's fascinating to be played that way.
You're just sure he's going to hand over all that money and then open that garage door, and the baby's not going to be there.
Yeah.
You know?
Because why would it? Right? I mean, if everybody else is out to screw him the same way he's out to screw... That's the other thing, right? He's confronting his own inclination. Like the way he lives his life has led him to this point, and all he can do is hope that the person on the other side has a sense of honor.
Right.
Which is just, the confidence to structure something that way. And I don't even think they do it consciously. I think they just know that that's where the story has to go. Yeah. That's their instinct.
Yeah.
But it's just so powerful.
I mean, I don't know how much, how many notes they get from the people that fund their films or whatever, but can't you imagine like somebody reading that and just saying, it's unbelievable that in this den of thieves, you're going to run into this, these people that give the baby back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I don't
you would just
it.
have to say that's I believe that this immoral character has got to run into morality somewhere along the line or something. I mean, I'm getting a lot of notes on a script that I'm writing right now, and I keep imagining, like, how did they deal with that? Someone had to raise that question.
To the point when Bruno and his young accomplice are hiding from the police, and they're in the river, and the little boy says it's too cold. You want him to escape, and then the filmmakers, the Dardenne brothers, throws another obstacle in front of these two characters by this little boy being so cold he's going to drown, and Bruno has to save him. Oh my God, then with that thing of him running away after he puts him inside that abandoned building and says, I'll come back for you. And the young boy is pleading, don't leave me. Yeah. And he leaves, and that to me was the tipping point that he felt that he abandoned his friend. And oh my God, what is he going to do? And the first time watching the film, it's like, I asked myself, where is he going to go with this motorcycle? And the answer came too, of course. It was a matter of patience. It was a kind of a nice tease, filmmaking-wise, to suspend what you might think. Give you enough time, the audience enough time to think about what is going to happen next. And it was such a surprise that he gave himself up. My Lord. Yeah. And that's when I was cheering for Bruno, which was the wonderful tipping point at the very end of the film when he cries with Sophie, that, oh my God, he's realized how screwed up he has made his life, her life, the world.
Right, those days of rolling around the grass and wrestling are so gone.
So gone.
But what I was just thinking as you were talking, Kenji, is I've never thought about this before, but in that film there's all this wonderful physicality.
Yes.
Like the way that they wrestle and throw those stones at each other and just the way that Bruno's like running around and when he gets beat up and that even though it has this kind of documentary feel, it doesn't, like in documentaries, it just seems like inevitably there's going to be something slack because that's just the way it happened and you need it, but they don't let that happen. I mean, I guess that's part of why they cast who they cast, is because they just will move and I don't know, like that drowning thing. I mean, that was real, the way that the little boy was climbing up on top of his head. That's what really happens.
Yes.
Yes. When that's what they teach you when you're a lifeguard, is that you have to.
Yeah, a drowning person will bring you down with them.
Right.
Yeah.
So they teach you these moves to keep the person from climbing on top of your head.
Yeah. And I just, I believe that they saw that somewhere, or that they've been holding on to that idea somehow, and they finally have a place to put it.
Yeah.
They absolutely work in a specific lane. They really only want to tell the kind of stories they want to tell. Mm-hmm. They always tell the same kind of story, in that they have carved out a genre unto themselves. Mm-hmm. But they're the best at it. Nobody else can do the thing that they do. Or other people have tried, and some have made admirable attempts, but really, you know it when you see it. And when someone is trying to do a Dardenne film, you say, oh, they're trying to do a Dardenne. Like, there's no question. It's like the way the Coen brothers have their own language, and that you can feel people pretending, the way that Tarantino was aped over and over again in the 90s because it looked like it was really easy, the thing he did. But then you realize that the reason that's a genre unto itself is because that only that person can really do that, and then not even that all the time. But this, I'm still not sure who the title refers to. I love that about it, because it's obviously both of them. It's Bruno, and it's so clearly either or.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
But they just create a world where both possibilities apply. Yeah. Where if the child refers to Bruno's son, then that is his focus for the entire film, and it's all about a man trying to get his child back. Mm-hmm. But if it's about if the child is Bruno, then it's about an adolescent growing up finally and taking responsibility. And either way, the story works. It just depends on your perspective. It's just...
Yeah, I think that it being about Bruno is... I'm in that camp.
I'm pretty sure it is too.
Because I don't think he spends the whole movie trying to get that kid back.
That's also true.
Oh, Bruno.
I can only imagine, like, contemporary filmmakers like Kelly Reichardt maybe have studied the Dardenne brothers over time. She certainly has a really appealing style. I just like her style very much. And
and Deborah Granick, too.
Oh, Deborah Granick, one of my favorite filmmakers as well.
But it doesn't feel like they're imitating the Dardennes, does it to you?
No, I don't. I wouldn't say that. I think they are. I mean, Reichardt, just her earliest films are so different from where the Dardennes were around that time. Mm-hmm. Especially Old Joy. I don't know that the Dardennes would be interested in that conversation. Just that it's too static for them. There's like, you go somewhere, you sit down, you come back. I get it. That's not their thing. People are always kind of moving and hustling and working their way through, physically working their way through whatever their lives are doing.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. Reichardt and Granick, especially in Leave No Trace, there's this boundless empathy for people in pain.
Yes.
Right? Or for people figuring out that they don't need to live the way they live.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or at least the daughter figuring that out.
Well, yeah,
but that's I'm going back.
Yeah.
The horrible tragedy of that film is the daughter learning that she has to let her father go, and the father knowing it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the worst part. He knows he can't change.
Yeah.
I know, you're right. That is so tragic. Yeah.
Yeah. And with Reichardt, I mean, you have stuff like Certain Women where it's just so rich in character and texture that does feel like something that Dardennes do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Also because it's in a small, like it's a microcosm of space, of humanity, of narrative. It's confined in a way that people are trapped with themselves in much the same way everyone in Belgium is, apparently, according to the Dardennes, that you can never really escape where you are or where you've come from. But it's just humanism, right? Like, it's just simply understanding that people are the most interesting things you can put in front of a camera.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that they were influenced by Agnes Varda?
Oh, maybe. Or Chantal Ackerman. You know, just I think their cinema evolves from those movements. Not the new wave, because they're not interested in stylistic tricks, except for the style that they've created for themselves.
Yeah.
But I think Ackerman, I think about things like, even Jean Dielman kind of fits in, right? I mean, it's a character study, if nothing else.
Which one?
Oh, Jean Dielman, the 3.5-hour epic with Delphine Seyrig going through the same motions over and over again.
Yeah.
But again, that's someone who's trapped in her own life, and that's the only connection I can find. I don't really see a larger connection. Stylistically, it's a world apart.
Right.
But I think the movement, the focus, the things that those filmmakers are playing with in the 70s and 80s probably influences the Dardennes to evolve what they do in the 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Also, just the fact that you could make movies the way they make them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably part of it.
Right.
They were waiting. They're older than most filmmakers who start out.
Yeah.
And they just found their moment and took it.
Yeah. So they shoot with a really high shooting ratio? Is that what you mean by they had that
I mean
advantage of-
compact cameras that could,
I
cameras
see.
that can go on for long takes, but also they can just fly along with somebody while they're walking around.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was the great thing when those came along, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was shocking. I mean, I remember seeing
was
Rosetta
so
in a theater.
liberating.
It was liberating, and radio microphones were absolutely liberating to see that you're not tethered, and you can hear someone remotely in the distance.
But video
And-
looked. Let me just tell you, because I went into that kicking and screaming, was so horrible.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I did a
there was
lot of
terrible-
jobs where really the aesthetic wasn't that important, but there was no such thing as a shallow depth of field. It was like from here to infinity, it's all in focus. And I'd say to the DP, "Can you soften that back?" He's like, "Yeah, if you knock that wall out." I mean, yeah, it was hard to just totally appreciate It's not anymore because now you can get whatever you want out of those cameras. But
Yeah.
Yes.
But there was a good 10 years where we
sucked.
all knew what it was trying to be, and it wasn't there.
It wasn't. I know. But then, yeah. So that Kenji was thinking that maybe L'Enfant was shot in 16 or Super 16 or something.
I think it
but-
is Super 16. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just mean that the styles were people were already reacting to the changes in tech, and that enabled them to understand what was possible. I think no, I don't know. Lorna Silence is definitely shot on 35. I think. I can't be sure.
Yeah.
This is exactly the sort of thing I should know going in.
Oh, good heavens. Who cares, really? Who cares?
No, we've talked in a circle around it, that's all.
Right.
I've
Right.
walked us into this minefield. I
Right.
don't know. But I think that, they love the sense of freedom that handheld gives you, and the texture of the world that they create is so important.
Yeah.
That we need to be in it unable to find our bearings. We need to be just pulled along with whatever characters are in front of us.
I mean, when you met them, did you talk to them about, how do they tell the actors, how do they block the actors? They don't light in such a way that you have to hit this mark. And I guess that's one of the wonderful things about the handheld cameras, that wherever Sophie ends up in space, the camera's there with her. They don't have to be, but I don't know. I mean, that's what it looks like. But did you talk to them about that when you met them?
We didn't get a lot of time. It was a round table with 5 or 6 other people, and I think we only had 15 or 20 minutes with them.
Wow.
Or we didn't get to talk about the way they shoot, which I regret.
No, you'd have to be talking to them for a long time to
get
into the weeds like that with them.
Next time if I ever get another chance.
God. A
one-on-one with them would be lovely.
Right.
Yeah, I can only imagine that not only is that, handheld and light cameras a way to capture things inexpensively and with activity, of course, in the frame, but painterly wise, it is a way of expressing what's going on, that you're in the moment. That's what it is expressing, rather than being on stilts and it's steady and the camera doesn't move. You're less of a fly on the wall, as it were. So you are truly in the moment, and especially if you're moving with them, as Bruno is walking through the hallways of this abandoned building. The elevator doesn't work. He figures that out. He climbs up. He abandons the carriage, places the baby down in this labyrinth of walls and doors. It's just, you feel like you're right there with him, and you're going through the maze with him. You are at risk yourself as an audience member, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean.
Taking the chance that nothing will happen, that the baby will be gone and there'll be no money. It's like, your mind is, they're giving you enough time to let it sink in. It's not going to cut to the next thing that's going to happen. Time has to go by. You hear patter of feet And it's like your mind is like rolling. What is gonna happen? Oh my Lord! Geez, there's some money here.
No, it is.
Wow, he's happy, motherfucker.
Yeah. What are the odds? What are the odds that someone else would come through?
Yes. So a dishonest person was honest.
Yeah. It's like there's one miracle in every one of their movies, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the miracle was
true.
getting the baby back. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my fucking God. That was too much.
Oh, I'm so glad you picked it. It's such a great, it's a great movie.
yeah.
And it's one I hadn't thought about for a while too, and it was just a great excuse to get back into it.
I know. That was Kenji's idea. That was a great idea. It was fun to watch it. Like
Yes.
we thought about Winter's Bone, and so I don't know when we start. Every night it was like, oh, should we watch Winter's Bone? It was like, oh, I don't think so. But then it was like, should we watch The Child? Yes.
Yes.
I have the energy for that.
See, that's
So-
how you know.
Yes.
Yeah. I love Winter's Bone too, but
Yes. There is a complexity in the dynamics of that rolls so quickly as the movie goes forward between Sophia and Bruno, and the world situation around Bruno. Who is he trusting? Can he? Who is he making this deal with to sell the camera? Is he trusting her? What? Oh my God! She actually suggests. Oh, by the way, you can adopt these kids. People pay good money. That passes, and then he has this moment. It's like, da-da! I'm gonna do this. Oh my fucking God! So there's so many moving parts in L'Enfant. It's a complicated story.
But
really.
she's also, it just dawned on me, she's not buying that little camera because she's into cameras. She's going to sell it to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they're just
she's
like,
taking him for some kind of ride. She's going to make more on this than he is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. She's got her reach is a little further out of this desperate circle, right?
Yeah. And it gives us a sense of Bruno's station too, where he is in the food chain.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He is like, she's a hustler and he's petty.
Yeah.
He's
Exactly.
like there's scammer, hustler.
Right.
I guess you vault up to child seller.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not an aspirational position.
No.
Maybe in his mind it is.
It's true. Child broker. That's probably a better
Child broker.
gig in their world.
Right. Better gig.
Yeah.
Right. He should be the one laying out 4,600 euros for the baby.
Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting to see that little thing that the baby was in, that little bouncy thing in the garage when he got the baby back. It was all colorful and clean, and it had all these little toys on it. And remember how he was worried? He said, the people that are going to get this baby, they're going to have money, right? And it was just so clear that whoever got that baby
Better
had the money to
take care of this
give
kid.
it like all those colorful things, and
Yes.
it was
That was
It's like
an interesting thing.
yeah.
A flicker of awareness that there's a structure, like a larger thing going on.
Right. That eventually the baby would make its way out to some family, some people with money or something, but they might have money, but they might not be good parents.
Yeah. I mean, it's the absolute terrifying unknown, right? Like that child he'll never see him again. It's going to disappear and probably be spirited out of the country, and it's just gone. And in a split, for a second, it seemed like an answer. Right. And then the world comes crashing back down on him.
Yeah, to him, it seemed like an answer.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
And by the way, Sophie, you are going to have another kid, so we can sell that one too, by the way.
Yeah. Well, once you figure out where the money comes from, why not?
Right.
It makes so much sense if you have no soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Life would be so much easier.
I assume.
And the way she fainted, and
yes.
and then then she stood up and she fainted again, and then she was just out cold, and
I love the sense that he's carrying her, and there's all this traffic and people, of course, driving by. A man holding a woman who's unconscious, with her arms, dragging on the ground practically, and zooming ahead. So here's this picture of society, just like, never mind, just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They say so much in such a simple image. It's
Yeah.
No, that's why I love them. That's why we keep coming back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is kind of a weird way out because actually no, it's not. I was going to say the final question on the podcast is always, is there anything of this film that you have borrowed or lifted or homaged or stolen outright? But you did say you're working on a new script, so I was just wondering if there's any connection there, any Dardenne influence on what the next project's going to be.
Geez, I don't think so. Do you?
Not in this sort of not in this sense. Nancy's new script is about
It's called When We Were Cowgirls.
Okay.
and it's certainly about young women having a comfortable life, abandoning that to be ranch hands in the 70s, which is, culturally at that time, post-Vietnam War,
Second wave of feminism, but
Second
not
wave,
in the ranching country.
but not in the ranching company.
But I don't think that there's any sense of lack of morals. I
Not
think
the same
the
kind of-
psychological problems are different. Yeah, I don't. I don't know. I mean,
Well, one thing
I
can
think
say
in
about
the
your story-
friendship, it's the two cowgirls are really good friends, and I think that there is some I don't know if it's immoral. It could be like immoral behavior from one to the other as a way of trying to push her away.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not really about ethics and morality. It's much more about opened hearts and closed hearts. So, and it's not going to have that gray look. Like
Not on a ranch. No, you need
set
sky
in the
and
high
sun.
cold desert. That's beautiful country. It just
It's ironically very inspirational, and also the challenge of defining and defending what a real friendship is. This is a lifelong friendship that's on the fray, and it's on a knife's edge of disappearing. It's really, the story just traverses this knife's edge, and each character wants something that the other one has that they don't have, and they need that. It's dangerous territory for very close people.
Okay.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's internal, except that it's externalized from being out in the West, because other sort of opportunities come forward in this tiny community, very gossipy small town community, where you have to be careful, especially if you're from outside, entering into a new place.
I think you've pitched it enough.
Yes.
Anybody out
Well-
there that wants to give us the money,
Yes.
you'll put them in touch with us, right?
I would be happy to. I'm
Certainly,
sold.
the
It sounds
Dardenne
interesting.
brothers have always been an inspiration of capturing what's real, that there's drama around every corner.
Yeah, that
It's
sense
exciting.
of real, is, that's there. That will definitely be there. But I have to say, I never have been able yet to get another feature made after 1,000 Pieces of Gold, and I went back to documentary, and boy, I like having a little style and take two and lights, and like I really in documentary you just don't get that,
Right.
because once it happens, if you don't get it, it's gone, and so Yeah, I won't miss. I probably won't be using a whole lot of handheld stuff.
Embrace the control.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, we're going to do that over.
Yes.
Oh, we're waiting on the lights. That's okay.
Yeah. Yes.
At least we have lights.
There is a joy in working with narrative as I have with Nancy and other films, and that is that you're not repairing something. Documentaries is often broken. There's half a story and you're trying to make the other half work. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what that is. Nothing seems to be working. And hopefully in the screenwriting that it's worked out. Then it's the performances that you're weaving together, and sometimes it's so much better than you ever expected. And dialogue drops, and the person saying in fewer words tells exactly what you want to communicate. So that's the beauty of it's never the story you set out to tell. Yeah.
You're just always
I hear
watching.
That a lot.
Is the story? Is that where it's going?
Yeah.
But that's the fun of it, right? When you finally get it locked in.
Yeah.
The discovery, the joy of knowing that you have your endpoint.
Yeah.
So I'm told. Anyway, that's the thrill that everybody chases.
It's hard to let go of what you originally thought it was going to be. Like one of the documentaries we made was like a video memoir called Downside Up. It was about my hometown saving itself from extinction by allowing one of its abandoned factories to be turned into America's largest museum of contemporary art, which is just absurd, But that was the one that I always felt like all the twists and turns actually were exactly, where it needed to go, and we were discovering it. But there was a lot of scripted sort of memoir elements to it, because it became this sort of self-discovery on my part about what the town was and how ashamed we were and what had really happened to the town. So that one I don't have any regrets. I don't think I knew what I thought it was going to be in the beginning. I was just following it. But usually there's like this concept about what's going to happen, and then it never happens. And I always feel like such a failure. It's like, how come I couldn't make that happen? How come I had to settle? It always feels like you're settling for whatever you got.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas with dramatic feature, you can just will it into existence.
Well, you write like 100 million drafts, and you get, you try it. By the time you're ready to shoot,
and
I'll bet this is the case for the Dardennes, even though it looks so sort of spontaneous and everything. They do a lot of drafts, and you know where you're going.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so and every scene is leading you towards where you're going, and that is so comforting. Like you can just remind the actor about this or that.
My thanks to Nancy Kelly and Kenji Yamamoto, whose 1991 drama 1,000 Pieces of Gold is now available in that lovely 4K restoration on disc and on digital from Kino Lorber. Thanks also to David Nin. He knows what he did. Nancy and Kenji are on Twitter at RebelsDoc, all one word, REBELSDOC, and you can find L'Enfant on DVD from Sony Pictures Home Entertainment and streaming in HD on the Criterion channel, which I hope means there's a Blu-ray on the way. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com, where I'm hosting a bunch of podcasts these days. Go check them out. You can find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it or the show in general, say something. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you've been enjoying us. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network. Jordan Heath Rawlings' The Big Story is essential listening, frankly. Stay inside, watch movies. I'll see you next week.